you found out that you're pregnant, probably in your third trimester, you've already shopped for your baby, and the thing in your mind right now is, which hospital are you going to deliver in? Do not worry, I'm here to answer you that question. Well, not directly, of course, but I'm going to give a review of several hospitals that I've visited, and also I'm going to be sharing with you factors to consider when you are choosing the best facility for you to deliver in. Stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monique Macrin. If you're new here, please subscribe, like, and share this video. So today we are going to be discussing on the factors to consider when you're choosing a hospital to deliver in. I will also be telling you about the cost implications that will be associated with several hospitals here in Nairobi that I have visited so far as I was doing my window shopping. So I believe that if you're expectant, this is a video that you must watch to the end, and you're going to start right away. So the very first thing you consider is proximity of the hospital to where you live. You should consider issues like traffic jam, so you want a hospital that you can easily access in case your water breaks. Sometimes you might expect a labor that will last 12 hours and actually get precipitate labor, maybe for like 30 minutes and everything. So my preference would be find a hospital that you can easily access. Okay, that is number one. Number two, the cost implications. It is very important that you work within your budgets. You don't want to have a small child and then you get into debt. And matters delivery, you can never predict how it's going to end. Sometimes there could be complications with the mom or with the baby, but God forbid. I'm hoping and praying for a safe delivery for everyone watching this video. But then let's not fool each other. These are things that happen. This is real life and we have to be prepared. So cost implication is very important. Now, for someone who is hoping for a normal delivery, my advice would be, instead of just considering the normal delivery, also consider the cost of cesarean section, because most of the time the cost of a cesarean section is usually more expensive. So when you consider, and then when you go for a normal delivery, you're not very sure that you will not end up going for an emergency CS, you get. So let's say you're told that the normal delivery charge is 30K and you're just ready with your 30K, and then something happens, you end up in CS and then you have to pay like 80K, which you had not budgeted for. That kind of an inconvenience can be avoided if you considered if you benchmarked the suitability of a hospital considering the cost for a cesarean section. So yeah, a cesarean section mostly is the most expensive mode of delivery, and if you consider that one and you're very sure that in case of a CS I'll be able to handle this deal, then that is a hospital that is within your budget. Now, another thing, when you're asking for packages, you need to ask, this is the cost when I have a midwife. What is the cost if I have a midwife? What is the cost if I have a gynecologist? What is the cost in case of other pain management? So that sometimes you're in labor and then you start asking for a gynecologist. You start asking maybe for an epidural and you hadn't shopped. You didn't know the cost implication. Because sometimes their service, you need to know if it's a package that is given, what services are inside that packages. For instance, you might get a hospital that will tell you our package for normal delivery is like 90,000, but then there are those two small costs in there, like for example, you might get a tear or an episiotomy. So for some hospitals, they're going to charge the repairing cost separate from the package. Now, if you had asked such questions before, then you will not get road shocks. You won't be that mom who keeps telling the nurses, but you guys told me that the cost of delivery is going to be 35K. How come now you're giving me 45K? Actually, as a rule of thumb, if you're told that the package is going to cost you like 35K, add 10 to 15K on top of that, budget for that. You'd rather work home with extra money rather than have maybe to borrow, get into some financial crisis. So yes, number two, the cost implication. Number three, now this is where we get to, no, number three, you need to make sure that in case of an emergency, do we have the right personnel to cater to the emergency? Do we have the, does the hospital have the right equipment? So in terms of personnel, how well trained are the nurses? Do we have senior nurses? Because, you know, some of these things, they require experience. You really want a mixture of nurses in between. So you need to know, you need to shop around and ask about the care given by the nurses. Are they qualified? The next thing, you need to make sure that at least the hospital you're going to, they have a resident doctor. Not a hospital that you're going to, like, in case of an emergency, they're telling you, okay, we don't have a resident doctor here. Our doctor is on the way, and then maybe they just make a call and the doctor comes after 3 hours. 3 hours, you could die. Your baby could, you know, like, try and minimize, try and, you know, foresee the disaster that can happen in case they don't have resident doctors, in case they don't have resident pediatrician, in case they do not have resident gynecologist. You must not waste the time. You know, in Itangwaje, a stitch in time saves 9, something like that. Yes. So I would advise, if you're going to a hospital, please make sure you ask them if they have a resident pediatrician, if they have a resident gynecologist, or they have a doctor on call. Okay. And also ask for cost, like an ultrasound. Other things that you can consider is, do they have a functioning theater? Because we've said that there's always the risk, there's always the possibility of going through a cesarean section, an emergency one. So in case you have to go through an emergency section and the hospital that you are a cesarean section, and your hospital of choice does not have either a gynecologist who is available always, or the theater is not functional, that will mean they have to actually refer you. Most of the time, the referral process takes a little bit of time. Then there's also the issue of traffic, like you're going to move from hospital A to hospital B. Then when you go to hospital B, there's also the procedure of you being received. I mean, why waste that time? Why not ask these questions before you actually check into that hospital? Other things I feel are important for you to consider is, does the hospital have like a newborn unit? So in case your baby is born with jaundice, in case your baby probably is having troubles breathing, things like that, do they have a newborn unit that they can that can admit your child in case it is necessary? Well, of course, I know some of these hospitals with these specialized services will cost you more, but then that is why a pregnancy is not a 1 month affair. It's usually a 9 months affair. So you should be able to save in. You should be able to save. And we also have government facilities with almost with these things. So anyway, I don't want to bring my personal opinion, but I would rather you go to a level 5 public hospital rather than go to a level 5 public hospital with all the needed amenities in case of an emergency, rather than go to a cheap private hospital that in case of an emergency you actually have to waste time going for referrals. Okay, so there's that bit of does this hospital have the required amenities and professionals in case of an emergency? Then those are the most basic things that I feel you should be able to consider. After that, things like comfort, privacy. For instance, for me, privacy is key. So do you mind when you are like in a delivery room with 3 other moms? Do you wish to deliver alone? Do you want to be in a hall when you're going through labor with other moms? Some people actually prefer this because they say there's moral support, you know, many of you. Then there are also people like myself who, you know, prefer to labor in private. So those are some of the things that you should consider. When you go to a hospital, ask them, do you have private rooms? What is the cost of private rooms per night? In these private rooms, am I allowed to bring in my spouse? Or if not a spouse, am I allowed to bring in a friend? You know, someone to keep you company. Someone, because, well, I don't know, but yes, so those are some of the questions that you should ask in case of comfort. And asking sometimes is not enough. It's important that you ask for an actual tour of this facility, because they might tell you, yes, we have a private room, but actually when you go and see that private room, then you consider the cost that you're being given. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So when you see what you're going to pay for, makes you make a more informed decision. So in terms of comfort, we've said that you can be able to ask, how are the delivery rooms like? Yeah, are you going to have like 2 to 3 beds in one room? If that is the case, then you expect that you're going to be like maybe probably 3 moms delivering at the same time, probably with their spouses in there. So if privacy is a concern for you, then maybe you need to opt for a delivery room that has only 1 bed. Then we have talked about the issues of visitation. Do they allow partners inside the labor room and also the delivery room? If not your spouse, a partner or someone you would like to be your support system during the journey. Another point to consider is food. It's food, because you know, pregnancy, it's giving birth to a child doesn't have to feel like a hospital stay for some people. If hospitality matters to you, then it's important to ask, do you have a menu? Do I have an authority in deciding what I need to eat? Okay, but those ones are when you want luxury. But if luxury is not your point of concern, then some of the questions that you need to ask is, when is the tea served? Okay, the frequency of serving meals, so that you don't go to a hospital and then you're starving and you've already paid. So when you're told about the frequency of meals, you're able to compare that to the cost that the hospital is going to charge. Okay, lastly, you also need to know about factors like, do they allow food from outside, in case maybe the frequency of their food, maybe after, if you feel like you're going to be hungry in that hospital, considering the frequency in which they provide you with a meal, then probably you need to be able to know if they are going to allow your relatives to bring you in maybe something like tea and porridge, because if that is the case, probably you can compromise. Those are the factors that I could think of. If you have other factors, please share in the comment section so that we can help each other.